Hey, it's Vicky, and today I'm here to talk about the books that I read in the month of April. April was kind of a weird month for me. I started out really strong. I took part in a week-long readathon, which I haven't done in a really long time. But unfortunately, after the readathon, which was like in the middle of the month, the second half of April was super slow for me. I was kind of in a slump, and I don't know if it was just like I was like hungover from the readathon, from just like, trying to read so much during that week, or what it was. But my reading definitely just like pretty much almost screeched to a halt in the second half of the month. But then on the last day of the month, I finished 3 books because I was like, I need to finish these books so I can wrap them up and move on. And so yeah, it was kind of a weird month. I did read 8 things. I had 3 physical books, 1 ebook, which was an ARC that was sent to me, and then I had 4 audiobooks. So let's dive in. All right, so the first book that I completed in April was one that I got from the library, so I have returned it. But that was Cold by Mariko Tamaki, and this is a YA mystery. Some might classify it as horror. I wouldn't quite, but it does have a ghost in it, so that might kind of be why people might classify it more as a like horror novel, but to me it was more like a mystery with a little bit of a supernatural twist. But anyway, the story deals with a teenage boy named, cannot remember, and I didn't write it down, anyways, a teenage boy who is murdered. And at the beginning of the book, you meet him as a ghost. And he is so his perspective is kind of him seeing some of the other characters kind of reacting to his death, and also the police detectives who are investigating his death. And so that's kind of how you meet those characters. And he was the sort of kid who didn't have a lot of friends at school. He was often teased because he was gay, and so people made fun of him for that and stuff like that. And so it makes the investigation of his death kind of tricky because nobody's talking, because nobody really knew him. So then the other sort of perspective is a girl named Georgia who went to school, or didn't go to school with the boy who was killed. His name was Todd, finally, it just came to me. Todd. She went to like an all-girls school, prep school, and he went to an all-boys prep school, the same school that her older brother goes to. So that's kind of the only reason she knows who he is, but there's something about him and his death that interests Georgia, we'll just say. And so it is more of like a murder mystery with that kind of supernatural twist. And overall, I thought this was a pretty good mystery, especially for a YA novel, because I think kids would really like this book because it is like a mystery that, it kind of carries you along. You want to know what happens. It deals with things that kids care about, like friendships, sexuality, relationships, school life. But then at the same time, it also kind of tackles deeper topics like I mentioned, homophobia, because Todd was picked on for being gay. There's like the homophobia, there's bullying, there is like a lot of talk and such about just sexuality in general, because this book does have a lot of LGBTQ rep in it, which I also thought was great. But I guess in the end, I just kind of wanted more from the characters. I didn't feel like, especially Todd, seeing that we get a whole, half of the book really from his point of view, I just felt like I didn't really know him. I wanted to get more from him as a character, and even from Georgia too a little bit. I wish we had just delved into these characters a little bit more. But overall, I think it was a strong, mystery, and again, one that I think young adults and adults alike would like, but especially young adults, and that is who it's geared towards. So all in all, I gave this one 3 out of 5 stars. The next book that I completed in April was one that I listened to on audio and borrowed from my library, so I don't have a copy. But this one was for the Random Reads book club that Bobby and I host over on Goodreads, and for April we decided to read Apples Never Fall by Leanne Moriarty. And this is a contemporary mystery mystery, I would call it, dealing with this family in Australia, the Delaney's. The parents, Joy, and I can't remember the guy's name. Sorry, I'm bad with names today. The husband and wife basically were aspiring tennis stars, but ended up becoming tennis instructors and owned like a tennis school in their area. And so they were well known for that. And then their 4 children also played tennis growing up, and tennis was just a huge part of their family. But the 4 kids, all of them never ended up like going pro and stuff. They kind of ended up falling out of love with tennis and doing other things. And the kind of main story of the book is that Joy goes missing, and a little bit before she goes missing, they kind of take in this girl who kind of shows up at their doorstep one night, and she's beat up, and they sort of take her in. And not long after that, Joy goes missing, and the family is trying to figure out what happened to her. And some of the kids, 2 of the kids are kind of questioning, like, was their dad involved? The other 2 are like, absolutely not, Dad would never do that. And then they're all kind of suspicious of this Savannah girl, the girl who had just kind of shown up. And so the whole book is basically this mystery about like what happened to her, what happened to Joy. But you're getting a lot of flashbacks too about their childhood and their family life growing up, and just sort of the dramas within the family, the way that they all sort of interacted together growing up and now, because you do see the kids now as adults and how they have kind of fared through life, and some of them are very successful and some of them have struggled, and they're all just on very different paths. And so it was interesting to just see how they all interacted together, how they interacted with their parents, and it was all just very interesting to me. The drama of it all was just super interesting to me. I was really drawn into the family aspect. And then also even the tennis stuff, because they do talk about tennis quite a bit, because tennis was such a huge part of their family life. I thought for sure that I would not care about that, because to be honest with you, tennis is just not a sport that I'm interested in, just not at all. But even the tennis stuff was interesting, because I think if you have ever been an athlete or done anything competitive, like a sport like that, you could relate to some of the stuff going on. And so I guess maybe that's why I sort of related to it, because I was a competitive dancer growing up. So I sort of understood like the passion or lack thereof, you know, as you grow and stuff like that. It was just really also just very interesting. I think in the end, the mystery was good. I definitely wanted to keep listening to find out what happened to Joy. And the thing, you know, in the events leading up to her disappearance was very interesting to me. I think in the end though, the kind of what ended up happening was, I thought for Leanne Moriarty was kind of safe. And things ended up being, I don't want to say wholesome, because the family there were some dark things about the ending, and there was definitely some dysfunction within the family. But when you compare it to books like Big Little Lies, it definitely wasn't as dark as that book. Some of the topics weren't quite as dark. But like I said, there was a little bit of a dark twist at the end that I wasn't expecting. But other than that, it was kind of safe. But also, like most of her books that I've read, very enjoyable. This one wasn't as good to me as Big Little Lies. Big Little Lies was a 5-star read. This one was not. But I still think it was definitely worth the read. And I enjoyed it. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. And like I said, I listened to the audiobook. And the audiobook was narrated by, I have it written down, Caroline Lee. And it was very well done. She has an Australian accent, because the book does take place in Australia. Leanne Moriarty is Australian, so it was nice to have the Australian accent, to listen to that. She did a really good job narrating, so if you're interested in this, I would recommend the audiobook. But yeah, it was a 4-star read for me. The next book that I read in April was a horror novella, an ARC actually, that was sent to me by the author. They contacted me and asked if I would like a copy, an e-arc of their upcoming novella. It comes out, I think it comes out this month, the end of May, or is it the end of June? Oh my gosh, I forgot already. But yeah, it hasn't come out yet. And so of course I said yes, because this was an anticipated read for me. And I was so excited when the author contacted me and asked if I wanted an e-arc. So that book, that novella, is We Can Never Leave This Place by Eric LaRocca. And this one was weird. but in such a good way. It deals with a little girl, young girl. I don't want to say little girl. She's an adolescent for sure. And she is in this like apartment, I'm assuming. That's what I kind of imagined. An apartment with her mom. And her father recently died, like very recently died. And it's her and her mom, and they're sort of dealing with that loss. And someone shows up at the apartment who this girl does not want there. She's very skeptical. She's very on edge about this person, we'll say. And that's all I'm gonna say about it. It kind of goes from there, because when that person, we'll say person, showed up, I was like, what? And the story just took on this very weird, creepy, dark turn that I just wasn't expecting, but ended up really, really enjoying. I just loved the feeling that this story gave me, like, because she is in this apartment, and it's, I'm assuming like, it's kind of post-apocalyptic in a sense that the area where they lived it seems like it has been like attacked or bombed and things like that. So like the building is falling apart. It has been hit by like bombs and stuff. And so her apartment, there's just a lot of like, it's in disarray. It's falling apart. It's like not safe to be living in. And you get this feeling though of like claustrophobia being in this apartment with her, and just being very isolated, because like I said, it's just her and her mom, and then this outsider shows up, and you just feel this sense of being trapped with them. And I just loved that. And this novella really showed me that Eric LaRocca is a talented writer. I read their book last year, Things Have Gotten Worse Since We Last Spoke, and that one was also weird and just kind of like shocking. But I didn't like it as much as I liked this one. This one, I think, really showcased their writing ability, and especially, like I said, the imagery, just putting you in that place with the characters. And like I said, it gets weird, it gets dark, it gets graphic, like violent. And it's kind of like something I've never read before. And so it just really surprised me, and I really liked it. And obviously with the characters dealing with a recent loss, it does touch a lot on grief and trauma, and how we process that as humans, and how when we are living through something traumatic, what we kind of do in our minds to protect ourselves and to get ourselves through those times. I thought that was brilliantly done. And so I really enjoyed this, and I would definitely recommend it if you like horror novellas, if you like sort of dark, maybe dark fantasy, urban fantasy with some horror elements. I think you would really, really like this. So yeah, again, I'm gonna put it on the bottom of the screen, the release date for this, because I totally can't remember if it was the end of May or the end of June. But anyways, when it's available, you definitely should check it out. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. And thank you again to Eric LaRocca for contacting me and sending me an e-arc. I really enjoyed it. The next 2 books that I completed in April, I kind of already talked about because they were ones that I read during the Backlist Readathon that took place in April. And I talked about them and reviewed them in that vlog that I did for that. So I read Tiny Pretty Things by Sona Charapotra and Danielle Clayton. This is basically like a dark ballet story, and I enjoyed this. I gave this 4 out of 5 stars, and I definitely want to read the sequel. And then my favorite read of the month, I also read during the readathon, and that is I Remember You, A Ghost Story by Ursa Sigurdardóttir. This is a mystery, but I would say it's a horror mystery because it has some supernatural stuff, great supernatural stuff, great horror stuff. I loved this. It was 5 stars for sure. Yeah. And then also during that readathon, I was working on this collection, the short story collection, and I did end up completing it by the end of the month. So I talked about a couple of the stories during that vlog, And like I said, I ended up completing at the end of the month, and that was Stephen King's Nightmares and Dreamscapes. And this is, like I said, a short story collection that came out in the early 90s, and it has, I want to say, 22 stories in it. And of the 22, not a one was a 5-star for me. This collection was okay. There were definitely a couple of 4-star reads that I enjoyed. Notably, there was one called Suffer the Little Children that was about a teacher who has a student that, let's just say, she's very suspicious of. We'll just say that. But that one was good. That was 4 stars. The other one that really jumped out at me too was You Know They Got a Hell of a Band. That was a 4-star, and it was kind of about, it was a story that Stephen King has done many times. It's kind of like the couple traveling, you know, in a rural area. They come across this weird little town. I'll just say that. But it was really cool. I thought it was really cool, and I gave it 4 stars. And to top it off, it was narrated, because I listened to the audiobook for this whole collection, and that story was narrated by Grace Slick, which was pretty cool. But yeah, so other than that though, this one was pretty much just okay. The majority of the stories I would say were probably 3 stars, maybe. I know there were definitely a couple 2 stars. I think there was even one star. So definitely, like, not my favorite Stephen King short story collection. I would say if you are trying to read all his stuff though, you're like a Stephen King completionist, then read it. But otherwise, you could probably skip it. It would be okay. Because like I said, none of the stories in here to me were like standout 5-star stories. But I'm glad I read it. It's one I can check off of my Stephen King list and say I've read. But it's definitely one that I don't think I will be visiting again. So I gave every single story a rating and then did an average, and it averaged out to 3 stars. So it wasn't great, but it wasn't awful. It was just what it is. The next book that I completed in April was one that I was reading at the second half of the month that took me almost 2 weeks to read this book, which, I mean, this wasn't very long. It was under 300 pages, but I think I was just in a slumpy mood after the Backlist Readathon. I just wasn't feeling like reading, and when I don't feel like reading, I don't force myself. So, so I took my time with this book, and I still ended up really enjoying it, even though I was kind of working through a slump when I was reading it, and that is Black Cake by Charmaine Wilkerson. This is a contemporary, maybe just like literary fiction, you could say, about a brother and sister, Benny and Byron. They recently lost their mother, Eleanor, and her attorney gets the two of them together because she has made this audio recording for them to listen to, because she has something that she has never told them about herself, and she wants to kind of get it off her chest, even though she's already gone, but she still wants them to know about it. And so they get together and they start to listen to their mom's story. And in the end, she tells them she had made this Caribbean black cake and had it in the freezer. And basically in the recording, she says, when you're done listening to this story, when the time is right, I want you guys to sit down and have the cake together. So that's where the title comes from. And so they start to listen to their mom's story. And it's a really interesting, layered sort of story. And at first, I was kind of confused when it kind of goes back into the past and starts her story. I was a little bit confused. But then things slowly started to come together. And it really became just a very interesting story, honestly, that I got really invested in. And I really liked the way that it was kind of like put together, like the way that the book was put together, and the ways that the author decided to go back and forth in time, and like when she decided to go back and forth in time, because it's not just strictly Eleanor, their mother, that you see in the past. There are other people that you get perspectives from, and even in the present day, there's one character besides Benny and Byron that you also kind of meet and get this story from. And so I thought that was just a really cool way to tell the story because you're getting it from so many different angles. And there also kind of ended up being a little bit of a mystery element to this, which was also fun. Not fun, but like it kind of like kept you hanging on. Like you wanted to know like, well, so what happened? What really happened? And so that was kind of fun too. I liked that. And I think that the other thing I really liked about this was the characters. I really liked Benny and Byron in the way that because they are kind of estranged when the book starts. For various reasons, they just haven't really been talking and stuff like that. And they're coming together because they are, you know, grieving over the loss of their mom. And their dad had passed away, I think it was like 6 years prior. And so now like both of their parents are gone, so they just kind of have each other. And I just liked the way that they kind of evolved throughout the book. And I liked how all of the characters, Benny, Byron, even Eleanor, and some of the other even side characters were so like layered, and they were so, their personalities, the way that they just were in the book was like society was trying to kind of put them in these boxes, and they were rejecting that. Like they didn't want to be like that. So they were sort of like pushing against all of these kind of conformities, if you will, that society was trying to put on them. And it was just really cool to see, and really refreshing to see that these people were, you know, trying to kind of break those barriers. I really liked that. So all in all, yeah, this was a good book. I really enjoyed it. I borrowed it from my grandma, and I'm glad that she lent it to me. I'm gonna give it back to her now. But yeah, I really enjoyed this. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. And the last book that I read in April was one I listened to on audio via Scribd, and it was for the Buzzword Reading Challenge to read a book with little or big in the title. And it was also the pick for the Literally Dead book club. So the book was All Her Little Secrets by Wanda M. Morris. This was a legal thriller about our main character, Elise, who is a Black woman working for she's a corporate attorney working for this, were they a transportation company or something? I can't remember like what the company was exactly. And she was having an affair with her white boss. And one morning she goes up to his office to meet him, to have one of their little secret meetings, and she finds him dead in his office and basically turns right around and runs back out. And the next day she is promoted to his position within the company, and then it's found out that he was actually murdered. Initially people thought he committed suicide, but then it was found out, no, he was actually murdered. And Elise is like freaking out, struggling, because she herself has a lot of secrets about her past that she just never really wanted people to know. And now like she's kind of being brought into the spotlight because of what happened to her lover / boss. And yeah, she's kind of like suspicious of the company now. Like, why was this guy murdered in his office? Why was I immediately promoted? She's the only Black person in her job. And she works with a bunch of like white dudes. And so the book explores that aspect as well, what it's like to not only be a Black person, but a Black woman working in like white corporate America. And I thought that was done very well. That sort of commentary was done very well. And I liked that. And I also liked how within the book, you got these little flashbacks about Elise's past, because you know she has a lot of secrets and there's definitely some stuff she is hiding and wants to keep hidden. And you sort of find out what they were in little snippets along the way. My biggest issue with this book was the actual main legal thriller of it all was incredibly slow to me and incredibly boring to me, to be honest. I just, for some reason, I don't think I've ever read a legal thriller, and I don't know if I ever want to again. I just don't know if it's my vibe. I just had a hard time engaging in that. And then I kept listening though, because I was interested in Elise's past and that sort of stuff. But the actual like current day mystery, what's going on with this company, what happened to her boss, I was not super interested in. And then I think the payoff at the end also it didn't deliver for me. It just didn't. And Elise, though like I said, I was interested in her past in that sort of stuff. I also think that, and I think a lot of people also had this complaint about her, some of the decisions that she makes throughout the book were questionable. Like, you're a lawyer. Like, some of the stuff going on, like, why wouldn't you, and I get it, you have apprehensions about the police and things like that, but also, like, you're a lawyer and you know some stuff is going down. Why wouldn't you contact a police officer or something? I don't know. There were just certain things that she did in the book that I was just like, why? Or even just in the first chapter when she finds him, her lover in the office dead, and instead of like calling somebody, she turns tail and runs out, and you're like, why would you do that? I don't know. So there are definitely decisions that she made that I wasn't crazy about. But overall, like, the actual mystery thriller aspect was just not doing it for me at all. So I ended up giving this one 2 stars. It just was kind of underwhelming to me. I didn't really enjoy it that much. Though, like I said, I can appreciate some of the themes and things that were explored in the book. But as a whole, I just wasn't crazy about it. So yeah, it was a 2-star read. All right, guys, so those are the books that I read in April. It was kind of a mixed bag. It was kind of a weird month. Like, I had a 5-star read, I had a 2-star read, I had a slump going on. It was kind of weird. And I hope that May things kind of start to come back to normal and kind of like rebalance out, because yeah, it was just weird. But yeah, let me know how your month went and what your favorite book of April was, because I would love to know. And that's it. I hope you guys had a wonderful month. I hope that May treats you well, and I will talk with you soon. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.